live and see who we have. So, all right.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Mitchell Osborn. This is my YouTube channel, Intuitive Mitchell, Intuitive Messenger. And we are going to be talking about mainly what happens when the significant others in your life and family think that your woo-woo stuff you do is kind of crazy. So my guest here is Marco. I'm going to try it. Felgueiras.
Yeah, that's
I
really
did.
good. Thank you.
I did
You
okay.
did a great job. Yeah, you did
So,
okay.
so Marco, tell us a little bit about yourself. I've got your Patreon link below you, so people can see that. I kind of chose that one as the main thing. So, who are you? Where are you from?
So I'm from Lisbon, and I do divination mostly. I'm a cartomancer. I read with all kinds of tarot or Lenormand or playing cards. I mean, mainly, if you look at me, if you wanted to define me, it's like card reading. I've been obsessed about it since I was like a very, very young boy. And I have a vivid memory of telling my mother when I was like 6, it's like, I'm going to be able to read cards. And she was like, sure you are, honey, of course.
Wow. How,
Yeah.
so we're diving right in. So, well, first of all, let's say, hey, Nancy, I know you're out there. You've already posted. Welcome, welcome.
Hi.
And Nancy's our moderator. So she's the bouncer. If anybody goes off the rails, she's going to bounce them. So
Okay.
when you were like you said 6 years old, you were like ready to read cards.
Yeah, because we had a lot of like Japanese cartoons when I was a little kid. And there was this very serious, dramatic cartoon called Candy Candy. And there's this dramatic episode where she goes to visit a fortune teller who reads with playing cards. And the fortune teller predicts Candy Candy's love interest, death, right there in in the episode. And I was so fascinated that I remember like going to my mother and pulling. It's like, I'm going to be able to do that. That's what I want to do. My mother was like, of course, honey, of course you are. And then fast forward to when I was a teenager and I saved up my allowance. And I went and I bought a deck of cards, and I started reading everywhere, and I haven't stopped since.
Too funny. So hey, Selkie, welcome. And you said something funny because you're referencing Candy Candy from years ago, and someone just turned me on to a clip where Maggie Simpson in The Simpsons is running through the woods at a carnival, and she runs into a tent of a fortune teller, and she's reading Maggie's cards, and I think the first one was the death card, and Maggie's like, and no, the fortune teller's like, no, that just means transformation. And then the next card was the happy squirrel, and Maggie's like, "Oh, happy squirrel!" And the fortune teller goes, "No, it's horrible." But the cards are wishy-washy, and then that's the end of the scene. But it was funny because death was just transformation, but the happy squirrel, which you would think, So it was a funny clip. Somebody sent me that. I literally just turned on to that recently. And then Simon in the Hermit's Cave did an unboxing of mystical medley or medley of mystical medleys, and they're like old timey cartoons drawn in the shape of that. And the last two cards he pulled was Happy Squirrel and Sad Squirrel, and I thought, this is pop culture at its best, at its best. So, 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 how did mom family allow you to dig into the cards? Was there encouragement, discouragement?
There was a lot of discouragement. My mother was an avid goer to fortune tellers. I mean, it was a thing. If you are in Portugal, you're either have gone to a fortune teller or you've known someone who's close to you that's gone to a fortune teller to have their cards read for the most mundane of advices. And she would go, and I remember being in like waiting rooms of these very eccentric older women who would, take the people into these secluded studio rooms that I had no idea what was going on there. I would be obsessed. But even though she was an avid goer, she didn't want her son to have the stigma of being a fortune teller or being a diviner. So she kind of never went. She was like, don't tell other people. It's like I had to come out of the closet twice. And so, mom, I read cards and take the picture. I like guys too. So it's
Yeah.
like all the dreams are shattered. She will ask some stuff for me sometimes. She's like, not in the company of strangers, darling. Just don't mention the cards because you're gonna creep people out. So
So growing up in your country, how was like religious life? I don't want to assume it's predominantly Catholic country, and
it
how did
is, but
and
you can
and
assume.
okay, and how did that fit in? Because I know a lot of, I mean, and I'm in a country where there's a lot of conservative Christians, and they still come knocking on my door calling me, and they're like, "Don't tell anybody I visited you." So how did that roll out in the country? I mean, it's like, do Catholics go to the fortune tellers too, and it's not a big deal, or is it like
Yeah,
the
they
devil's work?
do. No, no, no. It's not.
Okay,
It's not usually connected to the devil unless you're like into certain strains of, I don't know, God worship, like if more evangelic. But classic Catholicism in Portugal is really laid back. I mean, if you're going to pray to a saint to intercede to something that you want, you're actually doing a spell. And you're actually doing a spell on a dead person who
yes,
had a lot of power. So you're actually a
yes,
necromancer. And I did tell
yes.
the other day that to my mother, and I would tell her, I was like, you are a hell of a necromancer, mom. And she was like, no, I'm not. Stick it back. And I'm like, you keep praying to these dead people all the time.
That's
And
funny.
and she couldn't take it. So it's kind of like it's divided. You mean you go to the fortune teller because you want someone's forecast or someone's unbiased opinion on what's going on. You usually only now that you see card readers that talk about like life paths or spiritual paths. But back in the day when I got transfixed by cards, it was about divining the future, stuff that is taboo. Like I will see card readers who say, "Oh, I won't do third-party readings because like no, we want to be nosy, we want to know other people's business, and we just want to know if that person is into you or not. Usually that's the thing, but there's not a huge stigma for like religious persecution or whatever. We're mainly very chill about it. I
Yeah.
used to do this at school. In high school, I was the diviner who was during recess. People would come to have their fortune read, and
No.
and that's how I gained practice. I had that little white book. There was no internet, so it just had practice, and I ended up doing it for teachers too, which actually I had one teacher who I read for him, and it was very confusing because I thought the person was straight, and I kept saying, "That's so weird. The person you like. Is it a guy?" And he's like, "No, how dare you? It's not a guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I must be reading it wrong because it keeps popping out guy. I'm sorry." And then he went to a friend of mine who was like an older fortune teller, and he was like, of course it was a guy. And I saw him on the train, I don't know, like 20 years later, and he told me, "I just wanted to tell you that at the time I couldn't tell you, but you were on point. It was a guy and it didn't work out." So that was like the experience. I mean,
So you've been reading quite a while. If you started in like high school or before
I've
that
been
even.
reading cards for almost 20 something odd years. I don't like to put this age because there's this huge expectation when people use age as like,
I
"Oh, I've
know.
been reading the cards for 30 years, and my great grandmother was also the one who passed me the gift of reading
I'm a
cards."
I'm a third generation psychic medium tarot card
Yeah,
reader. And I, when people say that, most of the time I don't think negatively of it, but the energy often behind it is them still trying to convince themselves that they're worthy of doing this work, or that they need they're trying to sell you on it. And like I said, that's like, it's like me sitting on a TV, on a couch watching TV, and a commercial is trying to get me to buy their product. I know manipulation when I feel it.
yeah,
Especially, and it's like, that's what I feel a lot of times, and not by all. When it's like, when it's just there on their, been reading for 20 years, but when that's their lead in, that often feels very like heavy, like they're trying to create something that's not there. But it's
yeah.
usually
That's
just
exactly why.
intention.
That's usually why it's not my calling card because my calling card about reading cards is how accurate I could be or how helpful I can be to you. Not if I mean, I could paint with acrylic paints for 30 years and still suck at it.
Yes.
time time doesn't hold any difference. Of course, with practice and with studying things, of course you get better because you do it over and over again, but it shouldn't be the main. thing. And I also don't claim any kind of ancestral power because, my I don't know, all the relatives I don't know are very salt of the earth. No one read cards. No one was into magic other than my mother, who constantly talks to dead people and the saints. But the divination aspect, I would probably be the first figure in my family who does it. Just kind
Cool.
of other than my my stepsister, who was a Wiccan priestess, and she also read cards. But that's a a story for a whole nother
Well,
day.
and we talked briefly about before we got online about my grandfather born in Russia. He was German, but his last name was French. Well, not until I was like 35, 37 years old, my mom said, "Oh yeah, here's your grandfather's book." And I'm like, "What?" He was a metaphysical minister. He
Oh,
basically came to America, in the late 20s, early 30s, and brought his siblings over. Met my grandmother, who was a hillbilly from Tennessee, of one of 10 children. But my grandfather had been like a Baptist minister until when they moved to Florida, and then my grandmother and grandfather split because he went off with this Russian woman named Sonia, and I think that they met at like metaphysical conferences or something. But so because it was the breakup was not good. Mom didn't talk a lot about her dad, and I only saw him like once a year until I was maybe like 10 years old. He gave us $5 every year when he came into town. That's all I remember. But it was one of those things where I'm like, maybe this is where it comes from because he was very connected. My mom was very connected. Dreams. Then my middle name is I'm named after my grandfather, so it's kind of funny how it kind of trickles down. And there's a lot of like priest monk energy around our whole family. Like my dad was thinking about being a priest Episcopal priest when he was younger, and one time when I sat in a mediumship circle, the lady, she was going around to everybody. When she got to me, she looks at me and she goes, "Oh," and I was like, "What?" And she goes, "You have been a monk and a priest so many times I can't even count it." And I just went, "I believe you. I believe you." So SL Wyman's says, "Lucky my hubby gets my spiritual path, but this is a fascinating topic. Yay!" And this is let's dive into that. So I assume SL Wyman's. Are you Sarah? Because Nancy's saying hey to you. So both Marco and I have a significant other. I'm legally married. He's my husband. Marco, you said what'd you call him? Whatever he goes by, your husband.
usually I call him by my husband. We haven't gotten married because we're living in the middle of the pandemic, but we've been living together for almost 10 years now. So
Oh,
if this is
congrats.
not being married.
Yeah. Yeah, we're 14 over 14 years and it wasn't legal. But at around 7 or 8 years it became legal. And one day he's like in the garage working. I said, "Hey, it's legal. You want to get married? You can get on my insurance." He's like, "Yeah, okay." And so finally on the ninth anniversary of when we met, the day we met, we just went to the courthouse, got married, and had like 35 people over that night and had dinner. So Sarah's saying, hey, Sarah, if that's you, yes. Um, so yeah, how does your husband feel about all this woo woo stuff? And I'll share about mine too.
Yeah, well, when I met him, and because I'm very, very blunt, I was like, I read some cards, I'm do some weird still stuff. I recitate mantras in the middle of the night, blah blah blah. And he was like, I think he just wanted to get in my pants. He was like, yeah, great. He was like, great. I don't have a problem with it at all. And I was like, oh, good. And which is really, really funny because for many years in my life, and I think kind of society tells us that, oh, you have to meet that person who is so like you and likes the same stuff and is exactly like you. And I kind of was like defrauded by that kind of bit. And we couldn't be more different. We are just very compatible in what counts, like values and principles. But I think he didn't take it seriously. I thought he was like saying, "Oh, you're coming with the big guns of all the stuff that you know how to do or whatever." And then when we started moving in, and he started seeing, the books and the decks and the weird statues, he would be like, "Oh, it's a thing." But he doesn't criticize it, or he just doesn't care. It's not something that he is interested on. If I'm doing a conference, he's always supportive. He's like, great, do the conference, do the thing, or whatever I'm doing. But it's not something that catches his interest at all. I think it only catches his interest when there's like decks everywhere, decks in the
Yeah,
living room, decks in my study, cards on the floor, because I'm very messy, and that's when it starts getting. It's like, we have a few cupboards where you can put those things.
yeah.
But he didn't. His family is, I would say, slightly superstitious, because they've been to the house, they've seen the cards. One of my nieces loves me to read cards for her, and the other one, she was like, "This is fascinating, but I'm scared." And I'm like, "Okay, fine. Since you're scared, I'm not gonna push you into reading the cards with me." And so they don't say anything, and my family mostly doesn't usually care. It's something that friends are like, "Oh, and he also reads cards, and that's so fascinating." People in my life and my close circle of family just absolutely do not care. Not
So
not in a derogative way. It's just
what are your signs and what are your husband's signs? You said you're messy and you're direct and to the point. So me, I was thinking, I wonder what his signs are.
I'm Aquarius,
Okay,
and
gotcha.
he's a Leo,
Oh
so
wow.
it's those, the opposites attract. And
So they are opposites, aren't they? Yeah.
they are opposites in the wheel, and we are slightly healthily narcissistic to a point. We have a lot of self-esteem, and we're not shy in social situations, but we keep kind of like it's touch and go. We don't expand too much. But I've always had a thing for Leos. My first crush when I was in high school was a Leo girl who to this day is still a very close friend of mine. So if there's a Leo in the room, I'm gonna notice that person is a Leo. I'm always drawn to their energy because I find them fascinating. It's Leos and Scorpios. I don't know why.
So, hey, Maddie, welcome, welcome. And so I am a Pisces, and like March 14th, I'm towards the end of it, and my husband is Libra, he's 26, so he's towards the end of it. He's close to Virgo. Um, September, October. No, no, he's shied away from it. So, because Virgo would be my opposite, but he's Libra Sun, Libra rising, Gemini moon. So he's like all this air energy. He's extremely creative, nonstop energy, dyslexic. My moon is Capricorn, so I'm really grounded behind the scenes. And my rising is Leo. So that's my rising sign, which gets me on camera. But yeah, and we are really, really, really very, very, very different. And I look at, quote, the opposites attract and all that kind of thing. But I also look at, what? I think he and I signed up for some serious soul contract work because, I love him to death. We are best friends. We are lovers. We are brothers. We are parental figures to each other sometimes. We are antagonists. We are so much to each other, but we're also like, there's really no deal breakers. It's not that we're stuck with each other, but we both look at each other all the time. We're like, you know what? I don't see this relationship is going to keep going until we can, get everything we can worked out, so to speak, in the spiritual realm. But so he gets what I do. If he needs to make a jab, because every once in a while I'll say, "Oh, did you order something else for your studio?" And he'll look at me and go, "Did you order another deck?" And I'm like, "I use those decks, by the way." But and it's funny because in 1999 when I started studying all this stuff, when I came out of the gay closet, then the spiritual tarot closet, I did everything, self-taught, kind of, I think they call it autodidactic. I was reading, doing all the stuff myself. But then when I moved to Orlando in 2008 with him from a small town in Florida, was able to attend classes because, they're at night after work and I didn't have to drive an hour and a half to get home. So he went with me to my first like 6-week class, and each night was a different thing. Like one night was tarot, one night was psychometry, one night was tea leaves, one night was runes, one night was pendulum. And the interesting thing was on the tarot night, it was very frustrating for me because I just felt like I can't get it. I don't understand it. And I'll never forget my teacher. She held up the card, and I knew it was, I remember it being the King of Pentacles, and it might have been like Robin Wood or something, but I wasn't sure. She said, "Just tell me what you see on this card." And I literally looked at the card, and like the king started talking to me and I realized now looking back, or realized looking back, that I was very clairaudient. And the king just started talking to me, and I just said what the king was saying. She goes, "Thank you. That was exactly what I needed to hear." So I was given permission to learn my own way and be very more intuitive. But now I've studied the messages, and I try to read every little book that comes with it. But the night that I don't know why, because I didn't know what psychometry was at the time, but I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm so looking, when are we doing psychometry? When are we doing psychometry? Which, if you don't know what it is, or anybody listening, it's when you hold an object and you get the reading, the impressions off of it. It's why they say cleanse things if you buy them at a secondhand store, or any store really. So we get to that night, and everybody put an object in a bag, and then we would reach in and pull it out with our eyes closed, and we would say what we get. Well, I'm there. Hey, Jackie, Jacaranda. Welcome, welcome. And I remember holding it, and I remember exactly what I said. And I said, well, I keep seeing like this old house where there's a crawl space underneath, like a 40s bungalow. And the driveway has like two, like where the tire tracks would be is the concrete, but then it's grass in the middle and grass on the other side. I said, I just keep seeing this house. And then I keep seeing there's something where like someone's underwear is hanging out, and it's not a good thing. And this girl next to me is like this the whole time. And my husband, boyfriend at the time, was just looking at me going, he is crazy. What's he talking about? And when we got done, the girl said, well, I'm a little freaked out right now. She said, because my boyfriend and I just looked at a house that we're thinking about renting, and everything you said was right on. And then she said, and my parents are in town, and we were at Disney World, and I bent over to pick something up, and she was wearing a thong, and her pants were, the low cut, and her butt was hanging out, and her father lost it that he could see her butt and her thong and all this stuff. So it was one of those things where I realized, I was like, okay, I think I can do something right. But that's when he always tells the story. He says that's when I knew he had powers, and I don't use that terminology, but it was kind of funny. But he gets it. He trusts it. I'll hear him talk to people about what I do, and it's very positive. But he's like, "Oh, you gonna go you do your woo woo shit?" And I said, "Yes, I'm gonna go do my woo woo shit."
Yeah. Well, here it's usually I do a lot of stuff at night, like personal rituals and meditations and end of the day stuff. And he kind of has this temperament of there's like this time where it's like bedtime, where the only thing that he can think is like going to bed and getting sleep, and I'm really, really slow. And he'd be like, "You please do your things." And then he said, "Have you done this? And have you done that? Can we please go to bed?" The one thing that he usually cautions to me is when, imagine something. I'm very curious and inquisitive by nature. So if something usually doesn't add up, I sometimes come back, and if it involves like our circle of friends or something, I will pull cards, and then I will share with him the result, and he'll be like, "Please don't tell that to people." Just like, please, you're gonna stir up a lot of shit. And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just curious." And he's like, "But please don't tell people that you
Well,
went and saw it."
I do that a lot too, because I'm one of those people that, and I think this is the kind of the priest and monk history in my past lives or whatever. I can know the deepest, darkest, crazy shit about you, but it never really changes my opinion of you, and it often just helps me better understand our relationship. And I'm one of those people that I take secrets to the grave, kind of a thing. I just don't share. So, and by the way, hey Renee, welcome, welcome. So yeah, it's like, I'll pull cards every once in a while just to kind of dig into something and say, oh, okay, well, that's why they're reacting this way. And then I let it go. It's not like I
Yeah.
use it against them, or I go share it, or talk behind their back. That's just never been just never been my thing. I shouldn't say now it's not my thing. If I ever got pushed into a corner, or if I ever got threatened as a kid, I knew where the weak spot is. I knew where, where the dragon has like the one scale if you stick the sword in, you'll kill it.
Yeah.
It's like I knew right where to go, and you back the tiger into a corner, the tiger's going to find that weak spot. And that's when my Leo would come out, and I'd be like, psh, and then I'd walk away. But it was self preservation at the time. So crazy.
Well, yeah, I think with it's kind of like we always think about being the weird ones or being the out of the box ones, but for them, it's also kind of like I always told him. I remember like when I met him, I was like, you don't have to understand this. You don't
Yeah.
have to get this. This is my own thing, and we can do our separate things and still enjoy each other's company. And it was like early on when we started dating. And sometimes I'll do a jab because if I'm doing like a conference or something that runs for long periods of time or a lot of hours, and he's and you know that Leo is going to be like, oh, I want some, I want some attention and I want it now. And I've been like, well, honey, you can learn to read cards and we can talk about it. Otherwise, I'm gonna do this. And it's like, never mind.
Well,
Never mind, I just don't want it.
well, does he not have something that takes him away and keeps him busy too?
Oh no, he does. He
Okay.
has a lot of stuff, but there are specific times when, and I love Leo, so I find this characteristic charming. There'll be like, I want attention. Give me attention now. I'm really important. And I'm like,
That's
yes, yes, you are, honey, but not
and
now.
it was probably within the first like 6 to 7 months of Fabian and I dating. And, I lived in a little town outside of Orlando. So it took me like 45 minutes, an hour to drive into town. So, we didn't have Starbucks in town nor bookstores really much in my little town. So I would drive over to Orlando and I'm over there at a Starbucks reading, grabbing some psychic books and stuff like that. And he calls me and he's like, hey, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm just having coffee reading. He goes, where are you? I said, oh, I'm at Starbucks on this road. And he goes, what? Why didn't you come on over? And I said, listen, if this relationship is going to continue, you need to realize that I need my downtime and I need my alone time. And this is how I recharge. Later, I can look at it and think this is very much kind of a Pisces kind of influential thing because it's like I need my water to settle. I said, and when I'm ready, I'll come running. But I'm a quality time person, so I love to plan and make that time. And he and I, we spend, we're on the couch almost every night watching TV. We both have like two jobs. I have a full-time career in fitness and I do this work nights and weekends. He's a professional organizer and then he's a potter nights and weekends, which his two jobs are almost becoming like equal. So we're very busy people, but we have two big vacations every year. By the way, Portugal is on the maps for one day coming over there. One day's coming over there. But yeah, but it was like early on, I was like, I need to have that quiet time. And one of the times where I didn't offend him, but one time I said, you need a hobby. I said, because every time I come home, you're here. And it's like I never have the house by myself. And I said, and I like, you love doing pottery. So let's find you a pottery class or something. So at least I knew 1 or 2 nights a week I could come home and just kind of have the house to myself because it's just never that. Now I do. And it's he works weekends and stuff like that. So we have a lot of time, but we make time for ourselves and I balance well. I have to balance well. Otherwise it's not good for me. It's like if I don't get enough sleep, if I don't balance, it's a rough existence for me. So, and he gets that. And we take our vacations. So do you,
Well, yeah, yeah.
so you do this full time? I believe I think I heard you have a career as well.
Yeah. I have my full-time career, and which also I give readings like everywhere where I work at my desk. There will be cards, and people will be coming like, "Can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "Yes, ask me a question."
You'd be
Which I
like
kind of like,
you'd be like, okay, one answer, boom, there it is, star card. Get back to
kind
work.
of, yeah. And so we both have our careers, and we both have our hobbies, and at some point when I started taking this whole thing a lot more, because I did this for years without any expectation of recompense or whatever. I didn't think money was dirty. It was not kind of like thing that, oh, I have this gift and the gift can't be sullied by money. It was just something that would give me extreme pleasure. And up until a few years ago, someone told me, it's like, I don't know why you're not charging for this, because people like they take an hour of your time and your time is worth money. And I was like, wow. I never thought of it that way because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And And then with him, and I get it, and I told him, it's like, I'm going to start, because I usually sometimes I will mentor people in certain types of systems that they want. If they start one, like my motto is, give me 1 hour and you'll be reading cards. It's bing bang boom. It's like that. You don't have to learn 155 meanings plus 250 combinations. If you pay attention and if you look at what you're looking at, if you listen to the question, that's the thing. 1 hour, it's all it takes, and then you have to practice. That's what I
Yeah.
tell all my students. Like, I can teach you the ropes, but if you don't practice and if you don't make mistakes, if you don't ask questions, um, you're never going to be amazing at it. You're just going to be like going to do it like parlor tricks or something. And I did tell him, it's like, if I do this full time, would it bother you? And he's like, no, fine. And he's like, if it pays, he's like, if
Yeah.
it pays the rent, and if
Pays
you're
the bill.
happy, and if it's something that you want to do, fine. He just said, I wouldn't be comfortable with you doing readings with the house because I don't want strange people coming in. I'm like, God, no,
Yeah.
I don't want people that I don't know from anywhere. And I think kind of one of the good things about the pandemic is that people kind of like now they would
Yeah.
like use Skype or Zoom or Facebook Messenger or whatever, and they're more open to it, because here there's the ritual of actually going to the fortune teller and waiting.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be comfortable about getting like a complete stranger in my house, because it could be anybody.
Yeah.
It could be
And I
someone.
I did have where people could book and come to my house, but once pandemic hit, I pulled that back. And then, just not making my presence so aware out there. And then also from an insurance perspective of, I've kept it off, but people who I know, who I've had a reading with, I can give them a private link and they can schedule, something to come to my house. Because I've got my home office kind of set up for that. There are cats in the house, so you never know what people are going through and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been interesting. And I love the fact that it's like, okay, everything's online now. That really feels good. And for me, it's much more convenient. Like right there, I've got my bathroom. In between clients, I can run to the bathroom and and come back and go again. And I can close the door, and my husband can be in the other end of the house. And because if he's here and I bring someone in and someone out, that's also weird too. It's like they may just feel like, who else is here? Why is that going on? But yeah,
Yeah.
very, very, very interesting. And who was that? Sarah said, slowly starting to take herself to the point where you might go pro. Hope you do. Hope you do. If you feel comfortable. And it was interesting with the whole, like, taking money. I remember 30 years ago when I got into the health and fitness world, and as I started as a personal trainer, I remember thinking, I can't believe I can charge $50 for an hour session. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. And then once I stepped into the world of tarot, I at least learned that lesson about worthiness and believing. But it was still a little challenge to do that. And sometimes I would tell people in the beginning, I said, let's meet at a Starbucks. You buy me a coffee, I'm fine with that. We'll do, but I was very good about setting parameters. This is a 30-minute reading. We'll be done, and I'm like, thank you very much. And I'll drift over 5 minutes, but my boundaries are real important to me. And again, that could be because of just, I want to know when I like to know what to expect. And if I sit down with someone and an hour later I'm still going, I'm like, then I'm no longer happy. The reading's not going to be any good. But the boundaries are really, really good. And when you're online, it's easier to say, thank you. I will see you next time. But yeah. So any questions
Well,
from those watching? And I know it takes a few seconds to pop up. So if you have any questions for me or Marco, and what's your favorite divination tool, or what do you do the most of? And how do people find you too?
well, people can find me on Instagram at moira.readings. Moira, it's an Moirae dot readings. Or they can find me on my Patreon, which you kindly put the link to. Or you can actually, you can find me on Facebook. My name is barely, if you you either get me or my nephew.
That's
So,
funny.
and if you've seen me on this video, you're going to get that my nephew is a whole lot younger. So, but my favorite system, um, I like Lenormand a lot. I like the detective work that I do, looking at the things and doing the odds and crossing the things. It's really fascinating. One of the most satisfying things for me is laying out the 36 cards in the table and looking at them and just going like,
Which do you do?
hmm.
4 by 9, or do you
No,
do
it's
8?
4 by 8 and at 4 at the bottom.
I don't know why
It's
I
the one
don't
that
like that. And it's funny because I had Jamie Sawyer. This is for her tarot
yeah.
tiles. So those are all, and it's in the 4 by 9. So the tarot tiles fit over when you lay it out, so it tells you what house. I don't like cloths, and when I saw the board, I was like, oh, gotta have that. So yeah, so you like the 4 by 8 with the 4 at the bottom?
Yeah, because I'd like the 4 at the bottom to give me like a concise sentence of like foreboding. What is coming after the question that's been asked? And I look at those. I usually will look like at the first three, at the corner ones, at the last four, and I like to glance. I'm just gonna go in there and
Yeah,
look. Uh, I like a lot of people, and this is kind of my gripe with a lot of Lenormand decks is that they have the insets, but only with a number and the suit. But I like to see the playing card inset. I need that kind of negative space. I need the black spades and the little hearts and the little diamonds because it gives me a sense of also reading into the cards because I also read playing cards. So I kind of like I don't mesh them both, but people will say, "Oh, it's just random." A lot of people will say, "Oh, it's random." It doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. If you look at the coffin, and the coffin in Lenormand is the nine of diamonds, and you would think, why would a coffin be in the nine of diamonds? Well,
right.
if you think back then, someone dying meaning you would get an inheritance, you would
Yeah,
get a lot of money.
yeah.
So it's
And it is,
really not that
it's
complete
usually,
off.
and if you're going by 9 of diamonds as 9 of pentacles or coins, it's usually a woman, in the house. There's nobody else around. Like she inherited everything, you
Yeah,
know?
I own 51% of this company.
Yeah. So do you go with like, hearts or cups, spades or swords, clubs or wands, or is there a
Okay,
difference for
if
you?
I'm reading like Marseille, I really love the Tarot de Marseille. I'm gonna call them spades. I'm gonna call them coins. I'm gonna call them cups. And what's the other one that I'm missing? And batons, which would be on wands. If I'm using Lenormand, I like the playing card insert, so I'm gonna say diamonds, or clubs, or spades, or hearts. It's basically I'll tell it like it is. If I see hearts there, I'm gonna call them hearts. If I see cups there, it's gonna be cups.
So, but in other words,
So
what I'm asking is like if you said the coffin, which is 9 of diamonds on the coffin in Lenormand, I equate that to 9 of pentacles. It is, in other words, is that how you do it, or does the nine
yeah,
of diamonds? Okay,
no, no, no. Actually, but I do see the thing because in the Rider Waite you have that opulent woman with that great gown and all those diamonds surrounding her. So wow, that's actually serendipitous. I never thought of the nine of pentacles and the Rider Waite connected to
because
nine of
I've never
diamonds.
learned just reading playing cards like what their meanings are. I've always just connected them back to tarot as the minors. So I didn't know, is like would the 3 of clubs be the same energy as the 3 of wands and batons?
Okay, usually when I read playing cards, I don't take like a single playing card because it comes off as vague. And I don't have a connector.
Okay,
So usually I would like 2 to 3 cards to then give it a whole sentence or a string. With playing cards, you're playing kind of with the idea of, what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with an aggressive energy? Are we dealing with a team work, effort, money, thought, love, sex, joy, tears? It's a
okay,
lot more abstract. So if you look at playing cards, which I think is something that if you haven't uh, went in, please do. It's fascinating to read
yeah.
playing cards and it was the first system that I've seen as a child. And so it was the one, and actually was the last one that I've learned. And it's kind of liberating because you don't have the images, you don't have the vignettes of, oh, here's someone giving money to the poor, or here's people hitting
Yeah.
each other with sticks. Because then the way your brain works is you're going to adapt the things that you're seeing. And I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes when I'm giving a reading, there are different things in the cards that will to call my attention. Sometimes, I don't know, call about the Ace of Hearts or the Ace of Cups. Well, great, it's great energy, it's all about love, etc., etc. But if you're talking about, does that person really love me? And I get, a lot of clubs and the Ace of Hearts, yeah, 10 is a lot, 1 is a little. So
Oh, I
I
gotcha.
get more focused. I got more focused about the negative space and the white space in the card surrounding that heart that
Well,
is alone.
when you said like it's more abstract, that I don't know why, but that was like, okay, that makes sense to me. So it's not like you learn traditional meanings in tarot. It's not like you learn traditional meanings of the playing cards kind of a thing.
You could, for example, if you I don't know if you've known him, but he's also in the WDA. He's the Russian cartomancy teacher. Dmitry teaches Russian cartomancy, and
Okay,
it has a very strict tradition of meetings.
gotcha.
Something is going to be a party, something else is going to be an event,
Okay,
or a strife, or a conflict. You do have schools that will teach you that this means that. I am not keen to this means that, because if you're gonna ask me, I don't know, which stock should I buy, or is this a good house for me in terms of money, then I'm gonna read about that. And if it
yeah,
comes up, and if cards come up speaking about something else in their traditional meaning, for me, they don't give, they're not giving service to the sitter. It just so I don't, and there's no problem with reading that. I mean, like, there's like thousands of people who
wow.
read that way, but I prefer to just see, what's in favor, what's against, what do I see. If someone asks me a love question, especially like with playing cards, and all you get is a lot of spades and a lot of clubs, he definitely is not into you. You can just look at the
Gotcha.
cards and you go like, nope, nope,
Gotcha.
I'm
Oh, that
sorry,
is
no.
fascinating. Sounds like another rabbit hole. So,
It is.
hey, Scott, I saw that you finally snuck in here. Good to see you. And Veronica, oh my goodness, it's good to see you as well. So, you guys, we're kind of coming to an end, to wrapping up. Did you have any other questions for Marco or me? But yeah, I appreciate you being here. Well, anybody post anything? They can find you. We got your Patreon there, and then more.
Moray.
Where
It's the
does that?
fate. It's
Where'd
the
that
fate.
come from?
It comes from, I think that diviners, I like the idea of these three women weaving fate, like a tapestry. And I think
Oh,
we as diviners, we kind of look at those threads and we can like pull them, tear them apart, look into it and see what's going to happen.
it reminds me of
And that's
the
why,
It reminds me of the three witches in the play that nobody likes to say the name of, the Shakespeare play.
yeah,
That because, and it's funny because in that play that begins with an M, I'll be superstitious for a moment. We had the three witches. We had it was in college because my degree's in theater. We did that play in the round, and the stage was on. A, it could rotate. So the three witches come out in the beginning and do their thing, and then they stood at the four corners, and every time a scene would change, they would rotate the stage a quarter turn. So they moved the earth, they moved the stage along. So it was really kind of neat. And what you're talking about, like kind of weaving things together and stuff like that. And it makes me think of those three witches, it's telling the story.
yeah. The idea of three witches is very prevalent in a lot of mythologies. Like you have the Greek, you have the Roman Parcas, you have the Greek Moirae, or you have in the Nordic mythology the Norns. And basically, it's always three women who are connected to the destinies of men, and not
Wow.
even gods can overthrow the power of these beings. So that's why it kind of and it draws me into them. It's entities that I revere, that I think that are with us. So I've always liked the name, and I do it as a nomad. It's like, give me a bit of your thread, and I can take a look at what they cut and what they weave and what they spindle. So that's kind of where it comes from.
That's funny you said that. I just realized something. I've used the term like sometimes when clients are sitting there and they say, well, they'll say like, especially with mediumship, they'll say, well, how does that work for you? And I said, well, it's like I get an energy and I'm connected to it, and all of a sudden I kind of like take and just pull, like it's almost like I'm pulling a thread, and I'm seeing more and more, like I'm drawing a little bit more closer to me. And it's funny you use that terminology of like pulling on a thread, because that's what it feels like sometimes to me. Like I'm just bringing the energy into this world, like from the other side of the veil. That's neat, very neat. So, any other final questions? Otherwise, Marco, I appreciate you spending your evening, because it's like what, almost 8 o'clock your time. So
Yeah, it's almost 8 o'clock.
you have to tell your husband I said thank you for sharing this time. He's probably not in bed yet waiting for you, but I
No,
appreciate you.
no.
I tell you, we're up so early, like 9 o'clock, 9:30. We're asleep because we're up at 5:30 in the morning, and that's just who we are. We were taking care of a senior dog for so many years, and he just kept getting us up earlier and earlier to go to the bathroom and eat. And this we both get to work a little earlier, but by 9:30 we're in bed asleep.
Yeah, the cats get us up early around 5:30 because that's when they want to have their treat, and they wake us up. We
How
have
many
two
how many do you
cats.
have? Two?
I have two. I have two cats. One is named Circe, and the other is named Etna. And they look very, very similar, and it was not on purpose, but they're very, very spoiled, and they wake us up like at 5:30 in the morning.
Funny.
So I'm like going to zombie into the kitchen, giving their treats, and then going back to bed. Otherwise, it's impossible to sleep. But usually our bedtime is around, I don't know, 11:30 p.m.
Woo!
So
Wow.
that's so when I pass that boundary of 11:30, that's when the thing is kind of like when he's like, "Will you please go to bed? It's almost midnight."
Crazy. Yeah, we have Sebastian, who's a Flame Point Himalayan. He's around 15. And then we brought in two brothers that we named Santiago and Stefano. They came in a couple months ago. They're literally they were born around December 19th. That's the day we're going with. So we're assuming they're both little Sagittariuses. But it's so funny because their personalities night and day. And we even finally we looked at each other. We're like, "Do you keep wanting to call Stefano a girl?" We kept wanting to use the pronoun her, or she. And finally, I thought, you know what? Maybe Stefano is just very gender fluid. Who knows? But Santiago is definitely like, oh boy, he's just want to be in your face, want to be everywhere, wants to be curious, curious, curious. So very, very cool. So Nancy, thank you for that. Jackie, thanks for hanging out with us. Sarah, SL Wymans, I think I got your name right. And Maddie, it was a pleasure. Thank you all for hanging out. And once again, Marco, thanks for hanging out, chatting about some fun stuff, and tarot and
Yeah, thank you.
Lenormand and cartomancy and necromancy. I think you probably explained it the best I've ever heard, because I'm not going to tell you what I thought it was about. That other necro thing. I know necro means like dead. Um, but anyway, so any other final comments, questions, or thoughts, Marco?
Well, I think when you find the lesson here, if there is a lesson today, is that when you're with someone who loves you and respects you, it doesn't matter what you do. They're gonna respect it anyway. It doesn't matter that they have to be into it. It's just that they respect it and they lead you to it and go on your path. That's all.
Exactly.
So,
I
and it
agree.
was
I
wonderful chatting with you, Mitchell. Thank you.
thank you so much, and I look forward to chatting with you on the interwebs and out there, and maybe on
Yeah.
another world divination stage or others. So, all right, everybody.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll
Bye.
see you later. Have a good one. Bye bye.